I want to welcome everybody. We have a wonderful attendance. It's going to be a great evening. You'll be so glad you came. I'll tell you a little bit about Up Close and Personal if you've never been here before. It's something Women's Ministry does every year. We've had these dirndl aprons for a long time for other German events we've done. We just thought we'd wear it tonight to look cute. The cinnamon rolls have significance. When I was a little girl, I'm like a fourth generation Seventh-day Adventist, but my grandmother was a baker, German lady, and she baked, on Friday was her baking day. She made homemade bread and kuchen, but her specialty was cinnamon rolls. So I remember eating her cinnamon rolls for many years. And so when we started this, I thought that was such a memory in my mind to start the Sabbath with cinnamon rolls. So we serve cinnamon rolls at Up Close and Personal each year. We choose someone that is willing to do it and tell their story. And then we get together. We have a fireplace, even though it's not all that cold outside. But it has to have ambience, you know. So Henry Nieman, I have known almost my whole life. And dear, dear friend, he is going to tell his story here in just a minute. But I have some things I want you to notice. He has lots and lots of displays that he has put together through the years for different events. So you will want to be sure you look at all that stuff at the end. One significant thing is his experience with ARCO service station that he had, and he stuck by his principles rather than ARCO's principles, and he lost his station, but he stuck to his principles. And this isn't, can't hold a mic and all this stuff too.
Too much stuff. I didn't know you can hear me.
Yeah. This is a picture of the food factory in Germany that was his family's business, and the Nazi airplane hit this side, is that correct? And knocked it out, but this part was still there. Anyway, it's a lot of history that has happened in Henry's life. That is, he's got some more pictures like that over there, and this is the foods, right? From their family food factory. So you'll want to be sure to look at all of those things. Now we're going to start with prayer. We've got some interesting things when he's done with his presentation. So would you bow your heads with me? Father in heaven, we are grateful for the blessings that you give us and for the guidance even when we can't see tomorrow. But we know you're there, and you have our best interests at heart. Thank you for Henry and all the years that he has been faithful to you. Be with him tonight as he gives his presentation, and we're so grateful that he's willing to do that, and we're grateful for Henry. Thank you, Lord, for everything you do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Do you mind that I say a short prayer myself? Dear Father in heaven, I ask you to be right next to me and give me your words to say. Thank you for all you did in our life, and I'm so happy to be here with all these friends, and I ask you to guide me through this. Amen. Well, I was born in Hamburg a long time ago. If you are young, don't get old. I have to correct something. The food factory was actually from our church, like Loma Linda. And my dad, he started as bookkeeper, and he worked himself up to be eventually to be the head boss. When Hitler came into rulership, he made a law that churches cannot own any businesses. So the church had to sell the food factory. Of course, they choose people who worked there. And they choose my dad to be the COA, or whatever you call it. And you have to excuse my English because it's very, very fragile. There are many, many words when I read something in the Bible or any other, I don't even know what they mean because I never went to school. I just worked. But God was good to us. When I was a little boy, I remember very well how it developed with Hitler. And my sister, I had one sister, she was a year and a half older than I am, and she was much smarter than I am. I was a little slow, but anyway, I woke up a little later. Yeah, but I had one grandmother, my father's mother, was born and raised in England. And before the First World War, my grandfather didn't like Bismarck. And so he went to England and worked there in the restaurant as a waiter. He met my grandmother, they got married. They had one child, but it passed away. But anyway, then he got a message from Germany that he had to appear in court in Germany for inheritance. Anyway, so they went to Germany. The war broke out, the First World War, and he was drafted, and he did not make it home. I have his Iron Cross here with the papers from the First World War from my grandfather is over there. But anyway, but I just wanted to correct that with the food factory. And then after the war, the church bought it back from the private people. And so my dad, he was a typical Englishman. He was tough. And I was a little slow with reading, and so I had to read to him in the evening, and if it doesn't work right, then I was a little in trouble. But I loved my dad, and my mom was happy-go-lucky, always friendly. So, but when you grow up, not much happens to talk about. But when I turned 10 years old, Hitler was so established by that time that the organization was next to none. I mean, it was so perfect, and everything was lined up. You do this and you do that, and this has to be done on this. It sounds like Trump. Anyway, so my sister had to join the Hitler Youth, and they worked in hospitals and in families with lots of children. But the boys, they learned actually military stuff. We sang, we marched, and anyway, we had to be there, and they took care of us. And then September 39, the war broke out and everything changed. Military everywhere. And we lived outside of Hamburg in a small house and single home. And then the war progressed, and the British and American airplane came to bomb, and that was a new experience. I remember the bomb went into a neighbor house in Elchuk, and our air shelter where we were there, dust everywhere. We could hardly see each other. And my mother, she was so afraid. She shook like this and she couldn't stop. And that was the first experience. The house next door burned down, and then our school was also organized, and they sent letters home to the parents to prepare their children for a long trip, and they had to all the names and the collar here and had to be written in on everything, and so they told us to bring your child then and then a certain date to the train station, and then they took us. We had no idea where to. We had no address. My parents had no address, and my sister was in the same train, and I remember visiting her when we were going. And anyway, so we actually had to provide the address by writing home where we are. They had no idea. But they sent us to South Germany. They didn't bomb South Germany first, and that was pretty safe. And actually during the war, and I have to cut it short because I know I will run in trouble, but you know, we had to be 4 times be sent away during the war, and every time about close to a year away from home. Now, the first time I was 11 and a half years old. Now, mother, where is the mother here with an 11-year kid or no? Yeah. Would you like to let him go? And you don't know where to? And when we got there, it was in the middle of the night, and then in one big room, about 60 boys, and triple bunk bed we have never seen. We had no cabinet to put our clothing. We had to live out of our suitcase. And then at night time, the officer, the Hitler Youth officer, said, "Good night, Kameraden," and then, "Good night, officer." And he turned the light off and opened the door and closed the door, and he was still inside. We didn't. We thought he was outside. And one boy said, "Oh, I'm so sore," because we had to carry our suitcases from the train station, and that's a long ways. Anyway, and he says, "You are still talking? In 2 minutes you are out on the sports uniform and 2 mattresses off your bed." We had 2 mattresses, front, top and lower. 2 mattresses on the back, and standing out in formation. 60 boys running through one door, you never make it. And then he said, you can make it in 2 minutes, and dress uniform. We didn't make it, all night long. That was the beginning. That was a nice welcome. Anyway, the second time I was sent to the same place my sister was sent to. That was better. It was a cloister. And the nuns, they took care of cooking and washing our clothes, and that was nice. And I have no complaint. Beautiful. That was near Nuremberg. And anyway, the third time, they sent us all the way to Yugoslavia. By now, the airplanes, they bombed all over Germany. And Yugoslavia was occupied by the German army because we were still in Russia. And so we stayed with the family there. That was very nice. And we came at midnight, and so we were divided, each boy to one family. And I was very, very fortunate. I was guided to a young lady. She was 8 years older than I was and quite educated. And so we walked home. And most of the time she carried my suitcase. That was good. And but anyway, then she put me in one room, and I thought, boy, that's pretty snazzy. A beautiful bedroom set, typical for a young lady, in white, beautiful. It was the second wealthiest farmer in the town, so I lucked out. And so she says, "This is your room." And then I slept there, and then next morning I asked her, "Now, where did you sleep?" "Oh, I slept next door, right now." And that was the Ramper's room. They had one bed in there, and all the rest of you like to check maybe once a year or twice a year. Anyway, so I say, "No, this is your room. You sleep in this room, and I go in the Ramper's room." And but we were just like brother and sister from the beginning. And they had a young horse 2 days before I got there. It was a new horse born. I don't know how you call that in English. Foal? Yeah, oh, thank you. And it was Huchi was her name. And I got close to Huchi, and I was surprised because the mother horse doesn't like it too much. But we all three and four, we made it. And that was so nice. And they always said, "This is your horse, this is your horse." Now remember, this was my horse. Later on, comes back. Anyway, so during that time I was in Yugoslavia. Some inspection came from Berlin, from the Hitler Youth, and they asked for volunteer. Now, I have to say, I enjoyed Hitler Youth, to the mindest. I'm one of those guys, I'm squarehead, German, and I like to have it right, links, rechts. I like to be in time. I'm never late, and so anyway, I volunteered. They wanted 4 boys from our town, and I didn't know what for. And then he says, be ready in 2 days and to travel and stay there for a while. And so I was ready, and they took us to Budapest. That's the capital city of Hungary. And they had a Hitler Youth officer school there. I found out after I was there. If I would have known that, I don't know if I would have volunteered, because it was rough. If you think the military service here is rough, it's a baby crib, man. It's nothing. What they made us do is unbelievable. Now, by that time, I was 14 years old. They made us go down all the way, arms out, 1 foot forward and 1 underneath, and come up and down 10 times. You never make it. I guarantee there's not one strong young man here who can do it. I guarantee you. But we had to learn it, and I could do it when I was 48. Yes, I could do it when I was 48. When you start out early, then you can do it. Just a little in between. I was the Pathfinder leader at that time when I was 48, and we were at Pinecrest in the mountains, only the leaders. And all we old guys, we wanted to show off, and I pay you $100 if you can do it. Nobody could do it. And I did it, and I came on my right leg, Number 7. I had a little trouble. I couldn't figure that out. And I forced myself, and I felt a little in my back. And on the way home, I said, man, I got a muscle ache. It was a busted disc. That was the beginning with my back trouble, which comes on later again. Anyway, so we came back home, and we were, what do you call it when you advance in your rank? And see my English. And I'm only 96. Anyway, so I came home actually, because I have to skip something. It takes too much. Anyway, I came home. I was home about 5 months, and I got a draft notice. I was 15 and a half, and to the army, and so that was pretty quick. And they drafted from 15 to 70. Now, who is 70 here? A man? Any 70s? Well, I draft you to be in this German army. Yeah. And anyway, so I was drafted, and boot camp was in Denmark, and that's way up north. And that was going into winter time. We had no winter uniform, only summer uniform. We had no socks. They gave us rags, 4 rags like this, put your foot in it, fold it over the shoulders, and then you slip into the boot. And you know these army boots are up to the knee, and they were all hand-me-down from some other soldier. Maybe he didn't make it, or I don't know, all used stuff, and it didn't fit 100%. And anyway, I caught a bad cold. I was spitting blood, and they put me in a hospital on the base, and the hospital was close to the main entrance. One night at 4 o'clock in the morning, I hear noise outside, crunch, 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 crunch. Well, that means boots on gravel. All the boys I went to school with and I was drafted with, they moved out and was put on the train to go to Berlin. And I don't know if you have heard, Hitler Youth was put to Berlin at the very end of the war. And they said in that movie, which I have, they prolonged the war actually by at least 14 days, the Hitler Youth. The boys, they were all gung-ho, ready to go. And I have not seen not one boy after the war from the ones I knew to go to school with. So that was good God was good to me. He made me sick, and I had to stay home. And not a good feeling, but that's what it is. So I made it. God was good for me. Praise God. And I can see, when I look back through my whole life, that God sometimes was right here. And everything fell in place. And I've done my story. Anyway, so we had a redrafted officer who took care of us boys, and he made one illegal thing. He gave us a little piece of paper, name, rank, and serial number, released out of this outfit with weapons and in uniform for regrouping. That was his only ticket which could save his life. But he took that chance. He gave us the paper and said, boys, try to make it home before the war gets over, because you will be in prison of war at least for a year or two after the war. And he was right. And so 7 boys, including myself, from Hamburg, we started walking. Well, would be clean straight to Hamburg would be nice, but we couldn't do that because there were British soldiers, there were Canadians, and some Americans, and we tried to avoid them, of course. And so we actually only walked through the nighttime, very few miles, and then walked around, tried to avoid any. We didn't want to be seen. And sometimes we saw on the intersection a motorcycle parked with a sidecar, and there was a machine gun on it, and there was the SS. I don't know if you know what the SS is. And we avoided. One time we couldn't avoid it, and I don't tell you what came out of. And but we prepared. And anyway, we came to the canal, Kaiser Wilhelm Canal, from the Baltic Sea over to the Elbe, to the North Sea, which they built before the First World War. And we had to cross that canal. And the person who ran the ferry, he lived on the south side, and that's where we wanted to go. And he says, well, I'm going home now, and I'm not coming back, because it was close that the British soldiers came. Hamburg was declared as an open city. That means they don't fight anymore. It was destroyed anyway. And so they came out this north of Hamburg already, the British soldiers. And so we made it with the last ferry south, and we boys stuck together, and we walked, and all of a sudden I see a British jeep. There was a lieutenant or an officer, had these big things on an arm, and he spoke some German, and he saw us boys, and he says, you have to stay here in the ditch and let all the military go by. Yeah, well, okay, fine. When they are gone, then you can go on. They saw we were kids, 16 years old, and but we thought we had it made. I mean, we thought we were ready. We were brainwashed, I admit that. But anyway, so we sat in the ditch, and then the tanks came. The tanks, now the German country roads, they are very narrow, and the tanks, they take everything in, and they had their fun. They had these smoke canisters and threw at us, and then the tank, they came right at us, and the last moment they avoided us just to scare us. But that was fun. And we came to Hamburg in the evening, and there was curfew. Nobody was supposed to be out, but outside of Hamburg there were large homes, and the people were standing outside and said, why don't you stay overnight and go on tomorrow morning? And I said, I can't do that because my feet were so bloody, and if I stop walking now and want to start walking tomorrow morning, I can't walk then. And the boots were a little bit too big. And so I kept on walking all alone. Nobody in the city of Hamburg. We came in on the north side, and I had to go through the inner city, and that was something. I tried to avoid any person hide in and out of house, and in the park, in and out, and all of a sudden one guy jumped out of a bush and he grabbed me, you deutsches Schwein. That was a Polish And you know, all the Polish, they were in prison, and they had to help in the industry. And now they were the big Marxists. Of course, they were standing with British soldiers, and then one sergeant or whatever came out and he said, get away, let him go. So he let me go, and I kept on going. And there's one from Hamburg, one picture from a lake. That's the Alster, the large lake and the small lake. And there's one bridge over. The bridge was the only connection which was still intact from the north going south or west. And I had to cross that. If I didn't cross it, I had to walk 5 kilometers extra, and I didn't want to do that. So I took the chance and walked over the bridge, and then a jeep comes with a spotlight, you know, around, and well, I hid, and I made it over the bridge. And then Hamburg has a lot of canals and bridges, and close to the food factory you can see the picture. There's a very big building, high building, and I could see it already. And on the other side of the street, coming this way, I saw 2 soldiers coming, and they were on patrol, and they saw me, and they came across, and I said, they saw me, I'm a kid, you know, and I'm going home. And I said, mein Haus, mein Vater Englisch. My grandmother was from England. Guess who spoke English? A perfect Londoner, slang English, was my dad. Anyway, the soldiers came and they understood, and they escorted me home, one on this side and rifle ready to be used. And they escorted me home. And I walk around and onto the courtyard, and I make my family whistle real loud, you know. My sister always slept. We lived in a food factory by that time because my parents were bombed out twice. And then I made the whistle, and then I hear, Henry is home. I still hear that in my mind sometimes. And you know, now I prepared a little bit for this here. I started dreaming about it. And it came just like yesterday. And you never lose it. But I hear my sister calling. And so my parents, we lived in the 3rd floor. And they came down with my sister. My dad spoke English to the soldiers, and they had a ball. He invited them up to the place where they lived, and they had a ball. They came afterwards 4 or 5 times and visited. And my dad had some apple cider, and they thought that was booze, you know, and because they had some before, I could tell, because they had a little jigger sometimes before, but they didn't hurt me. Anyways, so my sister wanted to hug me. I said, don't touch me. My uniform is full of fleas and lice, and it could walk by itself. And so anyway, coming home, couldn't believe it. I got home 2 days before the war officially was over. Do you think God had something to do with it? I mean, the guidance was just, I couldn't understand it at that time because it was over my head. And in my life, I did things I'm very sorry about today. I was not a good boy. I don't like to tell you all the things I did, but anyway, yeah, I was engaged in black market. Oh man, I could buy anything. Nylons, shoes, material for clothes, no problem, I could. But anyway, I don't talk about it. And we had how should I say it? That my English word is gone. Every Friday evening, we got together. My sister played piano, like Mrs. Carr does. Where is she? Anyway, yeah, she played by ear, any key, and anything. And every Friday evening, we got our songbook out, and we sang. That's the whole songbook. Any song we knew, we sang through. But I didn't. I walked by, and it didn't faze me because I wasn't home yet in my mind. But we had a lady living upstairs in the food factory, and she sang alto. My dad sang tenor. My sister played piano and sang soprano. And I walked by with them singing, and they sang, "My Jesus, I love thee." And not the words, but the melody somehow. And I hummed the bass to it, and I sang the bass from then on. And every Friday evening, and then we went out in the stairways, and it's all concrete. It's like in the cathedral. It sounded so good. And so we sang for church services. Since we lived in the food factory, we had some food, and we had space for people who came from America, the brethren from the General Conference, and they slept in my bed. I had to move out. But anyway, they slept in my bed, and I got to know, I don't know where, anybody is old enough, Brother Oaks? Anyone know? You're too young. You don't know them. But anyway, yeah, he slept in my bed. And after I moved to America, I saw him one time. And it was a big reunion. It was good. Anyway, and so we sang Friday evenings, and he said, "You have to sing in that meeting." So, yeah, but that meeting was by River Rhine, and nobody traveled during that time. But God was good. Our choir leader, he was a dentist. And you know who his patients were? He was the what do you call it? The head man from the city, mayor. The mayor from Hamburg. And later on he was the president from Germany. And unbelievable. So when he had him in his chair, he says, "You have to do me a favor. We need 3 cabinets in a train going to Essen. Then we need 3 reserved." And well, he was the mayor from Hamburg. He could do it. So we got the places. You think God had something to do with it? Man, I mean, so many things in my life. This was unbelievable. Anyway, we sang in Essen for a big meeting, a cappella for a quartet. And I sang the bass, my dad the tenor, my sister soprano, and the other lady sang the alto. And then we had to go to another meeting, which is Lübeck, beautiful town today, but it was badly bombed. And that by the Baltic Sea. And so But by that time, we sang already in my future wife's hometown. That was the first meeting, and we sang there. My parents slept in her bed, and you see an old farmhouse on pictures there. That is my wife's grandfather's farmhouse, and they had two layers of hay levels, and the upper level the girls slept, and the lower level the boys. And but they all have some little cutout, and there was a ladder, so I got up on the ladder and I had to inspect. And it was fun. But my parents slept in my future wife's bed, so that all worked out just perfect. And my dad forgot the music, the notes to sing in Lübeck in the next meeting. So I had to write, please send me the notes. And then I found out that my future wife, she has never been in a big city, and only Bremen for one day for a visit, and also always lived in a small town. And so I invited her, and she came. And I went to the main train station to pick her up, and I claimed my future wife. She didn't know it. But anyway, she was beautiful, and we hit it off, we laughed, and then my mother was working in the kitchen, and she was helping my mother in the kitchen, but she slept in my bedroom. Don't tell anybody what I did. I went into my bedroom and looked through her purse, and I wanted to find out what her birthday was, how old she was. And I found out, I read October 21, 1929. Oh, I thought it was mine. No, that she had birthday on my same day, and 1 year later. So I put it back, but I didn't use it yet. And anyway, and I thought to myself, you are it. And we had a wonderful 6 years courting time. She lived 100 miles away from the place I was, so it was pretty safe. And I always was interested in the garage. We had a mechanic working for our trucks and cars for the food factory, and I was working in the office. And then many times the people asked, where's Henry? Oh, he's in the garage, helping my friend working on cars. That's the way I started working on cars. And then I had a chance to buy a motorcycle. Well, that was my ticket to go to Hude to see my future wife and the family. And I bought that motorcycle all in pieces. The gentleman took it apart before he was drafted because he wanted to have it when he comes back. But I'm sorry, he did not make it. And the wife sold the motorcycle all in pieces, sorted and marked and everything goes. I put it together, I think, 4 or 5 times before it was right. But I had a motorcycle. It was a 500cc overhead cam, oil injection. It was a Swiss bike, and boy, it was good. I put a sidecar to it sometimes later, but I had a transportation for going to Hude to see my girlfriend, and that was nice. The family was so nice always. Anyway, so. I was, well, let's see. I married when I was 23. That was 18, yeah. When I had my motorcycle, I was 19. And she drove the motorcycle, and I drove it, and we went all over, and yeah, it was good. So her mother and I, we understood each other. I had to wait a year and a half for the first kiss. Can you believe that? True. I waited, and I got it. But you know how? So, just like this. Oh, she was tough. Yeah. But we had she had two brothers, and they were all in the army too. And we got along so good. And it was just God's put it together. Yeah, I couldn't have done it. Nothing. When I think back, I couldn't have done anything the way it worked out. Anyway, so I was working for the food company. I was driving big trucks, 18-wheelers, and so I had my education there, and I was, my future brother-in-law, I introduced him to my sister. His parents lived in South Germany, and he and I wanted to visit his mother. She was ill, she had cancer. So we got on my motorcycle, and I tuned it up just perfect, I thought. But I adjusted the valves a little bit too tight. And we were going about 200 kilometers early in the morning. And the motor stopped and busted valve. And so I took the tank off, the seat off, and the head off, and took the piston out, and put it on my arm, and like this back to the city we just passed, and that was Hanover. And I went there and went from shop to shop and store to store, and I got my stuff together, and I found the right valve, but the stem was too long. And so I asked him, do you think somebody can shorten this stem? No, we don't have time for that. You have to do that. I never used a lathe, but I got it made. I cut the groove in and everything. It is perfect. And I put it together on the street. I took it apart on the street. My brother-in-law, he fell asleep next to the bike. But I came back by like this, and I put it together and cranked it up, and it ran. So, but in olden times, the first miles you have to go very slow. Well, I went very slow for a while, and then we had a long ways to go yet. So I opened it up a little more, and everything went fine. And we were on the Autobahn downhill, and that went so crazy. And all of a sudden, shoop, the engine stopped. And I thought, oh no, I overdid it. Well, I said, well, let's sleep. It was during the night again. So after 2 hours, I said, well, I try to kick it through and see if it works. It started, and I never had troubles with it anymore. And I went all through Germany and Holland and anyway. So we had a friend. He had a little family, and I met them through my wife's future wife, and they were short of food. And I went to some farmers, and I got a sack potatoes. So I thought, I bring them by on the way home from Hilda. Hilda was my wife's name. And I, from her home to Hamburg, that was 100 miles, and I bring by the potatoes for them. So I stopped, and we had a nice visit. It was nice people. It was one man with little child, little girl, and the sister-in-law and the wife, and we were good friends. And all of a sudden I hear that they received a care package, and that was organized by Camino, here in Placerville, Camino Church. Mr. Driver, Paul Driver, he sent the care package to my friend, and he got it. And then the neighbor farmer, the same, now if you don't believe it, I believe it, it was God who put everything together. The neighbor farmer, the same size of farm, 120 acres and 40 acres of timberland, and pear trees and apple trees. And so my friend, he came over here a year and a half before I did, and worked for Mr. Driver on the neighbor farmer, and he got to, then the farmers, both Adventists, they worked together with their equipment. And so my friend asked Mr. Miller, David Miller was my person who sponsored for us. And anyway, he asked him, wouldn't you mind having one German guy? Yeah, he says, I would like to have a German guy. So my friend thought of my potatoes I brought him, so he sent me a letter, dear Henry and Hilda, if you want to come to America, you have your chance. The next door neighbor is also an Adventist, has the same size of farm, they work together, he would like for you to come. Well, it took a year before all the papers and everything were done. Mr. Miller sponsored for us and sent us the money to come with a boat, and we came with the same ship. My friends came, and that was the second year where we didn't have to go to Ellis Island anymore. My uncle was a minister in New Jersey. He was in Java and Sumatra before the war, but then he was put in prison of war because that was Dutch country, and Dutch was on the other side. So he was in prison of war with Siegfried Horn. Maybe some people know the name. For 7 years in the prison in British India. And but anyway, my uncle picked us up. We stayed with him over Sabbath, and then my uncle brought us back to New York on Sunday morning, and we were there early, so we sat right in front, so we could look out of the windshield. Greyhound bus from New York to Sacramento. We didn't speak one word of English. We didn't know what to eat, and we were helpless, really. But thanks to the American people, and God was involved in that. We made friends with some people, and the husband took me, and the lady took my wife to the bathroom, and whenever they stopped, we didn't know what to eat, so I went, my wife had a bad cold. She was coughing, and the guy sat next to me. He says, Ludens, come. And so go to the store. And so I say, Ludens. I didn't know what Ludens was. The little box of cough drops. It worked. And anyway, so we didn't know what to eat. One time on the whole trip was a cafeteria where we could point, and we had chicken. Oh, that was so good. We filled up, and the rest of the time I bought chocolate and candy and chocolate, because we didn't want to eat anything. We didn't know what it was. So I bought 10 chocolate bars. My wife says, oh, you spend so much money, we have to work first and we make some money. So I say, that was 50 cents. She started crying. She couldn't believe it. 10 candy bars for 50 cents. And anyway, the first evening in the bus, there was winter time, just before Christmas. I took my harmonica out. Can you help me, Betty? She knows the story. Anyway, I started playing Silent Night just for Hilda and myself on the first seat. And all of a sudden, the guy next of the aisle, he started singing. And behind me, the lady started singing. All of a sudden, everybody in the bus was singing Silent Night. I didn't know you guys knew the song. That's a German song with a story behind it. And anyway, so they sang, and then I didn't know all the Christmas songs, so the guy said, "Hey, give me your harmonica." Normally you don't do that. I gave him my harmonica. He played for 2 hours all the American songs, Christmas songs, and all whatever you know. And that we felt like one family in the bus. It's just unbelievable. So we arrived in, Lake Tahoe. You know, Highway 40 used to be like this. And my wife said, "Oh man, I'm so glad there's a truck ahead of us. Now he has to slow down." The guy in front in the truck, he shifted down in the lower gear and passed the bus past the truck, and on he went 70, 80 miles an hour, like this. Oh, my wife didn't like that. And she says, I don't like the mountains. She says, I go back home. The last stop was Colfax. And the Colfax used to be in the canyon. And the train runs right through the town. And at that time, they still had locomotive. And you remember, you are too young. You don't remember that. But they made, when they come to a crossing. And my wife said, "No, I'm not going to stay here." Her nerves were gone. And she had her monthly, whatever you ladies have. And she felt miserable and worn out. 4 days and 3 nights on the bus, and not knowing where you go. No language, not one word. Yeah, I said yes and no, and window, bread, cheese. Oh yeah, we went one time into a restaurant in the morning for breakfast, and I said, bread and cheese, and that's what she brought, bread and cheese, and some butter she brought. But anyway, so we arrived in Sacramento. My boss was there, my future boss, and my friend was there with his family. And so we went right back into the mountain. Oh yeah, she says, I don't like mountains. I like flat country. That's where we came from. When you go to the North Sea or Baltic Sea, that's all flat land. Well, get my noggin together. Anyway, so senior moment. You don't have it yet, do you? Anyway, I went. Oh yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's strange when you get old. Don't get old. And anyway, we arrived at the farm, but my wife said she doesn't like mountains. Now I got it. And of course, we were right back Camino is in the mountains, 35 foot. But she didn't notice she was talking to my future boss. He spoke German. Can you believe it? Do you think somebody had something to do with it? And anyway, she talked to him and she didn't notice the curves. But then we arrived at the place, at the courtyard. There was a little house, and I have a picture from my house where we lived for 5 years. We lived there for 5 years, working for $1 an hour, and learned the language by our ear. And in wintertime, the next door farmer, Mrs. Driver, she used to be a teacher. She taught us 2nd grade and 3rd grade and 4th grade school books. So we learned how to pronounce some window and all this th, but you have the. We in German, we do it correct. We pronounce every vowel. Yeah. Anyway, so we arrived at the house. It was dark already, of course. In the house, they left the lights on, and there was a tree, Christmas tree with colored lights. Colored lights? We had still candles. And so we come in, the full furnished. Sorry, but it was wonderful. They had a Christmas tree, and there was everything, whatever you need to open up a restaurant with food, everything, boxes, bags, cans, everything. Stuff which we may need to fix something. Everything was there. I'm sorry, but that hit home. You think somebody had to do something with it? Yeah, and I didn't deserve it, I tell you that. But next morning we had breakfast in the sponsor's home, beautiful big home, huge room for music, just for music. She was a music teacher. They had a nice full-size organ and a grand piano. Yeah, they had one son and one daughter. And the next morning, my boss said, "Well, let's go out in the woods and get you some firewood so you have wood to burn," because we had to cook with it and also to heat the house with it. But that was just wonderful. We went into the house and he cranked up the big Caterpillar tractor, the TD9, and that was a pretty good size. And the boy, of course, he drove the tractor. And then I hooked up the cable around the trees. And then the first 2 words in English, hold it, back up. Those were the first English words I learned. And we got our firewood, and next morning the boss showed us what to do. Pruning the trees, he showed us how to prune the trees, right, scissors and everything. And that was common sense and natural too. So the nice thing was, he gave my wife a job too for $1 an hour. So we did not made $1, we made $2 an hour. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, whoever said that. Anyway, we felt at home there, and you know what we did. The big living room, going into the kitchen, going into the bathroom, going into the small hallway, back into the big living room. And we were walking around and were singing hymns and praising God and praying and thanking God what we have. We didn't deserve that, but they were so kind. Anyway, we stayed there for 5 years. We learned the language and the habits, and I learned farming, pruning, spraying, tractor driving, repairing tractor, and all that we did ourselves on the farm. And I worked there for 5 years, not quite. We left in November. But I thought I came for more than $1 an hour. I wanted more of the American dream. And Hilda, my wife, she had some relatives in Stockton. They were big farmers. And she knew that we were there. She came to visit. And she says, I have somebody, they are looking for a partner in a chicken farm. Well, a chicken farm was the last thing I was thinking of. But it was one way to get out of there. And so I made a septic tank and gas tank and electric pole and everything. We moved in with a trailer, 30 by 35 feet long by 10, into a trailer with 2 big dogs, Bodo and Asta. Oh, they were our children. And we moved there down, and in 2 weeks I knew that wasn't it. I knew it before, but I needed a way out. And so I told the people, you know, I stay a little bit longer, but this is not for me. And so the son-in-law from Hilda's relatives, he worked as a mechanic for a tractor shop. And he says, oh, you can have a job there. I get you a job. So I get a job there. I helped him out on Sunday morning. He had extra work there. And so he showed me a lot of things. And he said, you have a job. You start Monday morning, but you need your own tools. So we went to Sears, and the first time we used a credit card. That didn't go over so good. But we bought some tools. I took my friend with me, and he told me what to buy. And we in Europe, we have a little more brain in our head because we go by the metric system. And the metric system is so much easier than the junk you have here. You have to have a piece of paper and figure out on a piece of paper what an inch is over. Oh my goodness. But I learned it. And so that was good. And you know, then my boss, he knew I wanted Sabbath off. And but he didn't know about Friday evenings in winter time. So I was doing a valve job. I don't know if you know a valve job on a big tractor head, big stuff. And I did a valve job on it, and I saw that the clock was coming closer. And I thought, well, I have to go there. And I was just about ready to go. My boss comes over, and he says, puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, Henry, you go home, I finish. You know why? He grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist. His parents were church members. Do you think somebody had something to do with it? So all my life worked out just unbelievable. I don't know what the time is.
Don't worry about the time.
I'm over time already.
Doesn't matter.
Keep going.
Anyway, so my boss and I, we just hit it off. He started liking me. But you know, he had one problem. He smoked sometimes, and he liked his jigger sometimes. And that I didn't need it. So, but whenever there was a big job from these big, huge tractors, doing the logging tractors, you know how big they are? They grab the huge logs like this and take it anywhere we go up in the mountains 10,000 feet up and repair the tractor right there. My boss always liked me to go along with him, and I learned so much from him. Oh man, but I tell you, when he was working on this side, I was working on that side on the tractor, and I thought, you won't beat me, man. I would get you know, and that was so much fun. And one time, it was actually more than one time, that was on a Friday, and it got dark already. He says, I'm sorry I don't make it before sundown to Stockton. I said, don't worry about it. And he was thinking of the Sabbath, though. And he had an accident, had needed back surgery, and he was paralyzed after the back surgery. And I visited him many times, and he had some gold coins, and he says, here, take it for your boy. And we were good friends. Anyway, so wonderful experience. I learned so much. But then, you know, I had always a childhood dream. Now I go back till I was 6 years old, 5 years old. We had to walk to church an hour and a half, and we go around one corner. There was a service station, and they always worked on one car. And when I came going, my family walked, you know, and I had to inspect what they were doing and give them advice, those mechanics. And they were waiting for me already. It's Saturday again, he's coming. And I was coming, and they always had fun with me. And anyway, so my childhood dream was a service station, to serve other people and help them. And we bought a new house in Stockton, and one of the neighbors had a service station. And so I befriended him, and we walked around the blocks sometimes just for a walk. And he says, you know, if you want a service station, Richfield, they are looking for dealers because they are going to build a new station here on Hammer Lane. But Hammer Lane, there was 3 blocks from the service station, there was farmland. And there was nothing, no traffic, no houses. And so I thought, no. But then they had on Fremont Street, they had another one. But that was the area wasn't good. I didn't want that. Then they wanted to build one on Hammer Lane and 99. That sounded good, but that was too far back. I couldn't wait that long. Anyway, when I came to my boss and said, hey, Ruben Benz was his name. And I said, Ruben, I have to follow my childhood dream. I can have a service station. But I didn't have the money. I needed $1,500 in cash. And the rest of it, the oil company would give the loan. Well, we were through my uncle, the pastor. He married the oldest sister from W.G. Fessler. Does anybody know him? Fessler. W.G. Fessler, the old Dr. Fessler. Well, his oldest sister married my uncle. And the Fessler family found out, and they said, you are our family. And they invited us for everything. And so we visited them Sabbath many times. And Dr. Fessler, he grew up on a farm, and he was always interested in telling him about the tractors, what we did to them and so forth. And he knew that I wanted to, but I didn't have the money. And so he, my wife and Eddie was born already, and they were at the car already to say goodbye. And Dr. Fessler said, hey, Henry, I want to come in my office. And he says, how much money do you need to get your service station? I say, $1,500 I don't have. He wrote out a check, $1,500. Here, have your service station. Do you think God had something to do with it? It blows my mind when I think it, and when I think how I disappointed God and what I did. I'm ashamed. But anyway, it is what it is. I even looked one time my list. I'm on track, but I know I'm over time. But anyway, the representative from Richfield came to our house, and he must have liked what he saw, and I got my service station. Brand new unit. Anyway, brand new station, and on Hammer Lane. But there was no man's land after a few blocks, and I stopped on my way going out to fix a tractor. I stopped and wanted to watch the traffic go by, and I thought, oh boy, Henry, I don't know what you got into it. There are no cars coming by. So what I did, I had 6 weeks time. I needed my job I went to my old tractor job. My boss passed away, but the son took over, and I went to Tom. I say, Tom, you have a job for me? You got your tools here? I say, no. Tomorrow morning, bring your tools. Be here 8 o'clock. I had a job. I did all tractor work, all split tractors, wheel tractors, overhaul tractors. I was in my old Fiat, and anyway, so now I have to connect again. I have my service station, but before I had 6 weeks time, so I bought some little candles, just a little gift, didn't cost much. And I visited all the houses around the service station. That was at least 200 or 300 homes I visited. I had plenty time. Introduced myself. Mein Name ist Henry Nieman, ja, und ich bin von Deutschland. Ja, und ich mache eine Service Station hier, und ich arbeite an ausländischen Autos. Und I told them I work on foreign or domestic cars. And God gave me common sense. What I took apart, I could put together. Do you think somebody had something to do with it? And so I remember one of the first jobs was a Chrysler, pretty new car, and the valve lifters were click, 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 and had to take the carburetor off and intake manifold off and get to the lifters. I did it all perfect, and was completely quiet, so the first job was good. And anyway, I'm bragging. So anyway, yeah. Anyway. I lost my...
What happened with Sabbath?
Oh,
Filling station.
oh yeah. And so I had my service station. And you know, I had it for 20 years. And you know, during the 20 years, I hired 42 boys from the academy for part jobs, pumping gas. And boy, did we have the best time. We went, after work, we went water skiing, I took them snow skiing, and you know, we just had Johnny Effenberg passed away. And you know, one big boy, I was sitting in church, and there comes this guy, so big, and plunged himself next to me. Pop, how are you doing? Was one of the boys who worked for me. Yeah. And then I have another boy, in Lodi, he lives there. And that is Schrenk. Brad Schrenk. Brad. Yes. And he visits me, we go out for lunch. And he always tells me, Pop, you were my dad I never had. And you know that I don't tell you that to brag, but you know what it does to you. God had something to do with it. And so then Arco came, the turned from Ridgefield to Arco. And they didn't like my Sabbath closing anymore. And because I closed from Friday evening to Saturday evening. And they wanted me out. So I tried to mend it, but they didn't go for it. And I wrote a letter to them, and I involved the attorney from the Adventist in Sacramento, but I'm sorry to say he was no help whatsoever. But that's okay. You know, as soon as I found out that I lose the station, Eddie and I, we made a pamphlet, printed out nice, with everything what we believe in, and why we believe it, and when it happened, and so forth and so on. And we gave to every store which was in the neighborhood. And every customer who came by a big bath, we gave one of those things. And it worked. The people were so supportive, you have no idea. they tell me, oh, I broke the steep speed limit from Oakland. He says, I've wanted to get my gas before Friday grows up, and stuff like this. It's unbelievable. And you think God had something to do with it? Yeah, and anyway, so they came from the newspapers. 3 newspapers came. They wanted the story, what was the problem with Arco and the service station closing up. They all were on our side. And then the TV station, 5 TV stations came with their pickups, put their boom up, and are you Mr. Nieman? I'd like to interview you about your problem with Arco. And then in the evening I saw myself on TV, witnessing. And you know something? I know I'm not a Bible study, but I know basics, and it was just.
What did you do after your service station closed? What did you do next?
Well, I asked Arco for an extension for 6 months so I can relocate. I found a place half a mile away from my station. I wouldn't lose a customer, but it was still county, and county wasn't zoned for it. So if I buy the property, I could build, but I couldn't open the business. So, you know, you learn to pray. And many nights I couldn't sleep. And I remember one night, I went into my family room. I knelt down, there was a couch, and I prayed to God. And I said, you know, there's a time limit. I have only so much time. If you want to help us, please do. And so I found. And you know something, 3 days later, my wife always reads the newspaper. And she says, hey, isn't this the area you were talking about? Yes. The county had a meeting to let it go to Stockton for annexation, and Stockton lets me build the station. It was sharp. And I wanted to do more than just minor work. I wanted to welding and everything, you know. This downtown now, I fought with those guys, city fathers. They say, hey man, you never met a German yet, but I will have my shop the way I want it. And anyway, then I thought of building the shop. I bought the property, put it in escrow, and then I wanted to build, and I thought, I don't know how to start it out with the contractors and everything, that stuff. I had no experience. And so I thought of Mr. Fred Bebarts. A lot of people remember Fred Bebarts. He was a millionaire. He owned Lodi Fab, and Lodi Fab wanted to go union. He says, I'm not going union, I sell the business before I go union. So he sold the business and bought property for Lodi Metal Tech and wanted to do the same thing, but he couldn't do. What he did was making racks, like in Costco, where all the merchandise is on. So that was his business. But he couldn't build any for 5 years. And so he built fishing boats. I don't know what he did all, but And then during the 5 years, it was a little slow for him. And I came in and I asked him, would you meet me out there and tell me what to do and what not to do, because I know nothing about building. He came out, he says, oh, location is perfect, only a half a mile away. You don't lose any customer. I say, no, but the property is too low. You have to raise it up 3.5 feet. Costs you about $11,000. And I thought, I put a pump in and pump the water out when I have a flood. And then he says, you can build 5,000 square feet. I built 2,000, that's all the money I have. And then he said, the parking place, make it concrete. Don't make blacktop, you always fix it. And I say, keep on talking. My parking place is gravel. I didn't know gravel was not allowed for a shop parking place. It had to be blacktop. Well, anyway. Then he says, well, we'll see you. He took off, and I said, well, thanks for nothing. Because he didn't tell me anything, but I should know. Next morning, he comes to the station. You have a moment? I say, yeah. So we went into my little office, and he says, you know, we know you so long, and we know the problem you have with the service station, and we would like to help you. I have the money laying around, I don't need it, and I don't want anything to do with it. You have to take care of the contractors, and he said, if you need money, go to my bookkeeper and he writes you out a check, and just build your station. So what he did, all the iron beams and everything for the shop was done in his shop. Of course, he made money on that. And then it was slow for him. And he put his crew in to build my shop. He made money on that. So do you think God had something to do with it? Anyway, we built our shop. Oh, he was so proud of it. All the time he get a visitor, he showed him off the shop, you know. And when we moved in to the shop, we had 18 cars locked up inside to work on the next day. And we have a 5,000 square foot building, and we have four hoists in it. And my boy took over after I quit 96, and it was time for me. My back gave me troubles, and Eddie did a beautiful job. He's so loved by so many people. I think most people from Golden Oaks are going there, and from the churches. Yeah, a lot of people go there, and I know he's honest. He tell you the truth. And I retired, and then we sold our country home. We lived there for 39 years. We have, in the album, you can see some pictures. We had flowers all around our house, back and front, and anyway, so we sold our house and made a big money, because we sold it 2006, and it was the peak, the high peak. Do you think God had something to do with it? And then we had enough work at the house there, and we bought a mobile home. We went into a mobile home. But the mobile home was 5 steps up. And my wife fell down from the second step, and she broke her shoulder and her pelvis. And I was working for Ken Heffel. I was rebuilding wheelchairs. And he came in, hey, you got your phone on? Your wife is trying to get a hold of you. She's in the hospital. What's she doing there? Well, she fell, she broke her arm, and so of course I saw her in the hospital, and then the doctors misdiagnosed she had pain, and they sent us to pain management doctor, and he took care of Hilda for a long time and gave her injections, and it didn't help. And then they took a scan of her whole body, and they noticed lung cancer on the rib cage. And we went to San Francisco University Hospital there, and for a week she got some treatment. I don't know what you call it. I fix you a tractor, but I don't know the English words for medicine. But anyway, and then she came home, and she still had troubles. They checked. It went to the brain. She had brain surgery. And shortly after that, she went down, I could tell. And Eddie and I, we had to give her morphine. And you know, I have to tell you something. Our pastor came to visit Hilda. He knelt down next to her bed and sang 3, 4, 5 songs. Every stanza, a cappella, sang to her. I never forget that. I fell apart after Hilda. I don't know where I was. I did bad things, totally off the rocker. And I'm sorry. That's my story.
Are you ready to sing? Are you ready to sing?
Yeah.
Do.
Yeah. I like to play a song for you. It's a German love song. Du liegst mir im Herzen. Du liegst mir in meinem Sinn. That means you lay in my heart, and you are on my heart, you are in my mind. Okay, there's... Some people know it.
We'll wait for Marilyn to get seated. Henry, you ready?
Just a moment, I come over there.
You're going to go over there?
Yeah. Well, I can play here too, that doesn't matter.
Let's just play there.
Yeah, okay. I'm just a cripple. Okay. I'm ready. Du liegst mir im Herzen.
She'll follow you.
Oh. You did good.
Henry has one more song for us.
Yeah.
I don't have the words because you know it.
God bless America. I played something before, And Marilyn, will you lead out?
Play an introduction or something for him. God bless America. Okay.
The beginning of it. Thank you.
I've asked Henry to close with a prayer in German. So please bow your heads with Henry.
Unser lieber Vater im Himmel, ich komme zu dir und ich möchte dich preisen und danken für alles, was du für uns getan hast. Ich möchte witnessen für dich und ich bitte dich, wenn es dein Wille ist, erhalte mich gesund, dass ich noch was tun kann für dich. Ich danke dir für die Kirche hier, für all die lieben Freunde. Ich danke dir und ich bitte dich, segne diese Church, diese Kirche und sei mit unserem Pastor, Pastoren, wenn sie weggehen. Please help them and guide them. Bitte und bewahre sie. Ich bitte dich, lieber Heiland, erhalte uns in deinen Händen und komme bald, lieber, verkürze die Zeit und komm doch bald und nimm uns heim. Das bitte ich um deinen Namen willen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Henry. What a blessing tonight. Appreciate that. Don't forget to look at all the
I didn't need my